I was standing on the steps of the Gallatin County Courthouse in Bozeman, Montana, at 9:47 inches the morning, when a deputy in a tan uniform walked straight toward me and said, "Sir, are you George Mercer?" I told him I was. He handed me a folded document. "You've been served. There's a temporary restraining order against you. You cannot enter this building." I looked down at the paper. My hands didn't shake. 36 years as a fire captain taught me how to stay calm when everything around you is burning. But when I read the name of the person who filed the order, something inside me turned to ice. Kyle Mercer, my son. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. Seriously, wherever you are in the world, take a second and comment where you're watching from. It helps this channel more than you know, and it reminds me that none of us are going through these things alone. And just so you're aware, some details in this story have been changed for storytelling and educational purposes. Any similarity to real people or places is coincidental, but the lesson here is something I believe in with everything I have. I need to tell you why I was standing outside that courthouse holding a restraining order filed by my own son on a cold October morning in Montana with nothing but a leather bag full of my dead father's ranch logbooks. My father, Earl Mercer, passed away 5 weeks ago. Pneumonia that turned into something worse. He was 87 years old. He'd spent 62 years building Mercer Ranch outside of Livingston, Montana. 450 acres of cattle land and timber that he carved out of nothing. No investors, no inheritance of his own. Just a 23-year-old kid from Billings with a pickup truck and a willingness to work until his hands bled. By the time he died, that land was worth somewhere north of $5 million. My father's funeral was quiet. A dozen ranchers, a few old friends from the VFW, and the pastor from First Baptist, who'd known my father since before I was born. My son showed up 40 minutes late, stood near the back with his wife, and left before the burial. He didn't speak to me. We hadn't spoken much in 3 years, not since my wife Linda died of cancer, and everything between my son and me started falling apart in ways I still don't fully understand. 2 weeks after the funeral, my father's attorney, a man named Donald Sheehan, called me. "George, we need to talk about your father's will." He changed it. 8 months ago, Earl had rewritten his will. The old version split the ranch evenly between me and my son. The new version left everything to me. Every acre, every head of cattle, the house, the equipment, the mineral rights. All of it. My son found out. I don't know how. Maybe someone at Donald's office talked. Maybe my son had been watching more closely than any of us realized. But 3 days after Donald called me, my son's lawyer filed a motion to contest the will. The hearing was set for today, October 22nd, 10 a.m. Sharp, Gallatin County, Probate Court. I'd driven 6 hours from Boise in the dark, left at 3 a.m. to make sure I'd arrive with time to spare. I pulled into the courthouse parking lot at 9:30, 30 minutes early. Walked up the stone steps feeling something close to ready, and then the deputy was in front of me, handing me a piece of paper that said I wasn't allowed within 200 feet of my own son. I read the order carefully. Filed at 7:15 a.m., just over 2 hours ago. My son claimed I had called him the previous night and made threats. He said, I told him I would make him pay for contesting the will. He said I referenced my background in firefighting and said I knew how to make things disappear. Specific language. Carefully chosen words designed to sound believable. Every single word was a lie. I hadn't called my son in 11 days. The last time we spoke, I told him I loved him and that I wished we could settle this without lawyers. He hung up on me. I looked through the glass doors of the courthouse, and there was my son, standing in the hallway, talking to a man in an expensive gray suit. His lawyer. My son glanced toward the door, saw me standing outside with the deputy, and turned away. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what that restraining order would do. Without me, in that courtroom, the hearing would proceed. My son's lawyer would present his case, unopposed. The The judge might issue a default ruling, and 450 acres of my father's life would pass to a man who hadn't set foot on that ranch in 5 years. I turned to the deputy. This restraining order is based on false statements. I never made those calls. He looked at me the way people look at someone they can't help. Sir, I understand, but until a judge dissolves the TRO, I can't let you in, even if it's lies. Even if it's a court order. I looked at my watch. 9:52. 8 minutes until the hearing started. I pulled out my phone and called Donald Sheehan. He answered immediately. George, where are you? I'm standing outside the courthouse. My son filed a restraining order. I can't get in. The silence on Donald's end told me everything. When was it filed? 7:15 this morning, before the courthouse even opened. He had it ready. Donald cursed under his breath. Can you get to Judge Caldwell's chambers? He's handling TRO filings today. Different judge, different floor. Ask the deputy if you can access the west entrance. That doesn't go near the probate courtroom, I asked. The deputy thought about it, checked with someone on his radio, and nodded. You can go to the second floor through the west door. Stay away from courtroom B. I moved fast, through the side entrance, up a stairwell that smelled like old tile and floor wax, and into a waiting area outside Judge Caldwell's chambers. The clerk, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, looked up. Can I help you? I need an emergency dissolution of a temporary restraining order. It's based on false statements. There's a probate hearing starting in 6 minutes downstairs, and the person who filed this order did it specifically to keep me out. She studied me for a long moment. Name? George Mercer. She typed something, looked at her screen, then picked up a phone. Your Honor, I have a George Mercer here requesting emergency review of a TRO filed this morning. He says it's connected to a probate matter in courtroom B. She listened, nodded, hung up. Those were the longest 5 minutes of my life. I sat in a wooden chair and thought about my father. I thought about the last time I saw him. 3 days before he died. He was sitting up in bed at the ranch house, too stubborn for a hospital, a glass of water on the nightstand, his old leather logbook open on his lap. He'd kept those logbooks for 50 years. Every day, without fail, he wrote down the weather, the cattle count, the work that needed doing, and whatever was on his mind. Some entries were 2 lines. Some were 2 pages. He looked at me and said, George, when I'm gone, take the logbooks. Don't let anyone else touch them. I didn't understand then. I understand now. Judge Caldwell's door opened. He was a large man, with a white beard, and the kind of eyes that had heard every lie ever told in a Montana courtroom. Mr. Mercer, tell me about this restraining order. I told him everything. The will, the contest, the hearing downstairs, my son's pattern of behavior. I told him I had phone records showing no outgoing calls to my son for 11 days. I pulled them up on my phone right there. Judge Caldwell examined them. Then he pulled up the TRO filing on his screen. Your son claims you called him at 9:47 p.m. last night. From your home phone. I was driving through Idaho at 9:47 last night, Your Honor. I have gas station receipts and my GPS history. I was nowhere near a home phone. I was in my truck heading here. He looked at the evidence for maybe 90 seconds. Then he signed a document, handed it to the clerk, and said, TRO dissolved. Insufficient basis. Mr. Mercer, get down to that courtroom. I ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, past the deputy who'd served me the order. He saw the dissolution paper in my hand and stepped aside without a word. I pulled open the door to courtroom B at 10:14 a.m. The room went quiet. My son was sitting at the petitioner's table with his lawyer. A man I later learned was named Garrett Webb. Donald Sheehan was at the respondent's table, looking relieved and worried at the same time. The judge, a woman named Honorable Patricia Ames, looked up from the bench. And you are? George Mercer, Your Honor. Respondent. I apologize for being late. She glanced at the paper in my hand. Is that a dissolved TRO? Yes, Your Honor. Filed this morning by the petitioner. Dissolved 10 minutes ago by Judge Caldwell on the basis of false statements. My son's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the restraining order was filed in good faith based on my client's genuine concerns. Judge Ames raised her hand. We'll get to that. Mr. Mercer, take your seat. Court is in session. Garrett Webb was smooth. I'll give him that. He stood, adjusted his tie, and began presenting his case like a man who'd rehearsed every word. Your Honor, my client, Kyle Mercer, contests his grandfather's will on 3 grounds. First, Earl Mercer suffered from cognitive decline in his final year of life. Second, the will was changed under suspicious circumstances just 8 months before his death. Third, George Mercer exercised undue influence over his elderly father, isolating him from other family members and manipulating his decisions. He called his first witness, a doctor from Billings named Stafford, who claimed to have reviewed Earl's medical records and concluded that Earl showed signs consistent with early dementia. Donald stood for cross-examination. Doctor, Stafford, did you ever meet Earl Mercer? No. Did you ever speak to him, examine him, or observe him in any clinical setting? No. But the records. Have you read his daily logbook entries from the months in question? His what? Earl Mercer kept daily logbooks for 50 years. In the entries from March through November of last year, the period when you claim he was cognitively impaired, he recorded cattle weights accurate to the pound, tracked fence repairs across 12 sections of pasture, noted weather patterns that match NOAA records exactly, and wrote personal reflections that demonstrate clear, logical, emotionally complex thinking. Donald held up one of the logbooks. Would you like to read an entry from the week you claim he couldn't think straight? Doctor. Stafford looked at Garrett Webb for help and found none. I'll take your word for it. The judge made a note. Then came the logbooks. Donald opened the first one carefully and asked the judge's permission to read selected entries into the record. Judge Ames nodded. Go ahead. He began with an entry from February of last year, 8 months before my father died. Kyle called this morning. First time in 4 months. Didn't ask how I was feeling. Didn't ask about the ranch. Said he needed $30,000 for an investment opportunity. When I asked what kind, he said I wouldn't understand it. When I asked who was involved, he said it was time sensitive and I was wasting his window. I told him no. He hung up without saying goodbye. That's the 5th time he's called this year. 5 calls, 5 requests for money. 0 questions about my health. 0 visits. George was here last weekend. Drove 6 hours just to check on me. Fixed the barn door I'd been meaning to get to for 3 months. We sat on the porch and watched the sunset. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. That's the difference between my son and my grandson. George shows up. Kyle calls when he needs something. The courtroom was silent. Some of the old ranchers in the gallery were nodding. They'd known my father. They knew that voice, that directness. Donald turned pages. June 14th. Last year, Kyle came to visit. First time in 2 years. Brought his wife. She spent the whole afternoon taking photographs of the house, the barn, the pasture. Not like a person who appreciates beauty. Like a person appraising a property. She asked me 3 times what the land was worth per acre. Kyle told me they were thinking of relocating to Montana. I asked if he wanted to work the ranch. He laughed. Said he wasn't interested in manual labor. He was interested in the asset. That word, asset. My ranch, my life's work, 60 years of breaking ground and building something from nothing. And to him it's an asset. Like a stock ticker. Like a number on a screen. I looked at my son across the aisle. He was staring at the table. His wife, sitting behind him in the gallery, had gone pale. Then Donald read the entry that changed everything. November 1st, 9 months before Earl died. The day he changed the will. Went to Donald's office today. Changed the will. Gave everything to George. The hardest decision I've ever made. And I've made some hard ones. Burying Margaret was hard. Watching George lose Linda to cancer was hard. This was different, because I know Kyle will fight it. He'll hire expensive lawyers and say, I was confused. I was not confused. I am 86 years old, and my mind is sharper than my knees. I changed the will because of something Kyle said on the phone last week. He said, Grandpa, you're going to die soon and somebody has to manage your assets. Not I love you. Not how are you feeling. Not can I come visit. Just you're going to die, and I want what's yours. That's not grief. That's not love. That's a man waiting for a body to go cold so he can cash a check. If I give Kyle this ranch, he'll sell it before the ground settles over my grave. He'll take the money and burn through it because he's never learned what it means to build something. George will understand. George always understood me. And here's what I know about my son that Kyle doesn't. George will give Kyle a way back. He won't punish. He won't abandon. He'll find a way to make Kyle earn what he wants. And that's the only way Kyle will ever learn to keep it. I heard someone crying in the gallery. One of the old ranchers, a man named Dutch, who'd been my father's neighbor for 40 years, was wiping his eyes with a red bandana. I couldn't look at my son. I stared at the table and held my jaw tight because if I looked at him, I'd break. Judge Ames removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She looked at Garrett Webb. Counselor, do you have a response to these entries? Webb stood slowly. Your Honor, personal writings are subjective. They reflect emotion, not legal reality. These logbooks demonstrate consistent mental acuity over a period of months, Judge Ames said. They contain verifiable data points that match public records. They show clear reasoning, emotional depth, and sound judgment. If anything, they're the strongest evidence of testamentary capacity I've seen in 20 years on this bench. She turned to my son. Mr. Mercer, did you tell your grandfather he was going to die soon and that someone needed to manage his assets? My son hesitated. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispered something. My son looked up. I was concerned about estate planning. That's a yes, Judge Ames said. And in the 5 years before your grandfather's death, how many times did you visit the ranch? My son didn't answer. George Mercer visited monthly, the judge continued. Reading from the logbooks. 12 visits a year for 5 years. That's 60 visits. How many for you, Mr. Mercer? My son's silence was the loudest sound in the room. Judge Ames leaned back. I've heard enough for now. But before I rule, I want to address the restraining order. She looked directly at my son. A TRO was filed this morning against your father. It was dissolved within 2 hours because it was based on fabricated claims. Phone records show no contact between you and your father for 11 days. Your father was driving through Idaho at the time you claim he called. This isn't a gray area, Mr. Mercer. You lied to a court to prevent your father from attending this hearing. My son's lawyer tried to stand. Don't, the judge said. She continued. The will dated November 1st is valid. Earl Mercer was of sound mind. The evidence is overwhelming. The entire estate passes to George Mercer as specified. The contest is denied. Then she paused. There's a penalty clause in this will. Section 4. Any person who contests this will without legitimate cause assumes full responsibility for all legal costs. Preliminary fees total $38,000. My son's face drained of color. Additionally, I'm referring the false TRO filing for investigation. If the county attorney determines charges are warranted, that's a separate matter. But I want to be clear. You manipulated a legal protection designed for victims of genuine threats, and you used it to obstruct a court proceeding. That is not something this court takes lightly. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck once. People filed out. I sat at the table for a long time. Donald touched my shoulder. You did it, George. Your father would be proud. I don't feel proud, I said. I feel like I just watched my son drown. He drowned himself. I know. That doesn't make it easier. I found my son in the parking lot. He was leaning against a silver BMW with his wife standing 10 feet away. Arms crossed, face tight. He saw me coming and straightened up. The anger was gone from his face. What replaced it was worse. Emptiness. Come to celebrate? No. Then what? I stood in front of him. My son, 32 years old. Dark circles under his eyes. Thinner than I remembered. A man who looked like he hadn't slept properly in months. What happened to you, Kyle? He laughed. The bitter kind. What happened? You want the list? Because it's long, Dad. Your mother died, I said. And everything fell apart. Don't use Mom as an excuse. I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to understand. There's nothing to understand. You won. I lost. Grandpa chose you. Mom chose you. Everyone always chooses you. Your mother didn't choose me over you. She loved you more than anything on this earth. Then why did she make you promise to keep the ranch and not me? Because she knew you weren't ready. Because she knew I was a failure. Because she knew you needed to grow into the man who could handle it. He looked away. His wife cleared her throat. Kyle. Not now, Jenna. I waited. The Montana wind blew across the parking lot. Somewhere, a truck engine started. Then my son's voice broke, in a way I hadn't heard since he was a child. I owe people money, Dad. A lot of money. How much? He closed his eyes. $212,000. The number hit me like a freight train. To who? He opened his eyes, and I saw fear. Real fear. The kind you can't fake. It started with sports betting after Mom died. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake all night. And the games were always on. I thought I could control it. I thought if I just hit one big win, I'd stop. But I never stopped. And now, there are people who want their money, and they don't care about payment plans or hardship stories. They just want their money. Why didn't you come to me? He stared at me. Because you were broken, Dad. After Mom died, you disappeared. You stopped calling. You stopped visiting me. You drove 6 hours to see Grandpa every month. But you never once drove 3 hours to see me in Seattle. The words hit harder than the gambling debt, because they were true. After Linda died, I'd retreated to the only thing I knew how to do. Work. The ranch. My father. I'd poured all my grief into taking care of Earl, and let my relationship with my own son wither. I'd done the same thing I was accusing him of doing, choosing what was easy over what was hard. And Jenna, I said quietly, looking at his wife. Did she know? Kyle went rigid. Know what? I'd watched her at the ranch that day, taking photographs. I'd listened to what my father wrote about her. I'd noticed things. Tell me the truth. All of it. Jenna spoke from behind him. Her voice was flat. My father is in real estate development. He's been trying to acquire ranch land in the Livingston corridor for 3 years. He sent me. You met Kyle on purpose, I said. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, my son said, turning to her. And I was too stupid to see it. I loved you, Jenna said, tears starting. I really did. But my father, he knew about the ranch, about what it was worth. He introduced us at that conference knowing what would happen. He told me if I married you and you inherited, he'd buy the land for $7 million. Nearly double its value. We'd all be rich. Your father used you, I said. He uses everyone. He calls it business. And the gambling, I asked. Did your father know about Kyle's debt? Jenna looked at the ground. He helped arrange some of the loans. My son leaned against the car like all the strength had left him. Everybody was playing me, the whole time. Not everybody, I said. My son looked up. I stood there in that Montana parking lot and made a decision that went against every rational instinct I had. A decision that my father, somehow, had seen coming months before he died. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Jenna's father. What's his name? Richard Calloway, Jenna whispered. I'm going to have Donald contact the FBI field office in Billings. If your father has been orchestrating predatory lending and manipulating a probate case through a third party, that's federal territory. They'll investigate. Jenna went white. He'll destroy us. He's already destroying you. This is how it stops. And the gambling debt? Kyle's voice was hollow. I'll cover it. My son stared. What? On conditions. And they're not negotiable. Kyle waited. You go to treatment. Real treatment. Inpatient program. Minimum 90 days. When you come out, you attend Gamblers Anonymous every week for a year. After treatment, you come to the ranch. You work, not as my son, as a hand. $15 an hour, room and board. You learn what Grandpa tried to teach you, what this land means, what it costs to build something real. And you pay back every dollar of that $38,000 in legal fees through your own labor. That'll take over a year at those wages. Yes, it will. Why? Why would you do this after everything? I thought about my father's logbook entry. George will give Kyle a way back. He won't punish. He won't abandon. He'll find a way to make Kyle earn what he wants. Because your grandfather bet his entire legacy that I would, I said. And because your mother asked me to never give up on you. My son broke. Right there, in the parking lot, he put his hands over his face and cried the way he hadn't cried since he was a little boy who fell off his first horse and looked up at me with dust on his face and tears in his eyes and said, Dad, I can't do this. And I'd said, yes, you can. Get back on. That was 26 years ago. This was now. Same boy. Same fear. Same answer. Get back on, Kyle. I'll be right here. 4 months later, February, my son stood on the ranch porch at 5:30 in the morning in 12-degree cold. Breath smoking in the darkness, holding 2 cups of coffee. He'd completed 94 days of inpatient treatment. He'd been at the ranch for 3 weeks. His hands were blistered and cracked. He'd lost 20 pounds of city weight and gained something harder to measure. I came out, and he handed me a cup without a word. We walked to the barn together. That first month was ugly. He couldn't drive the tractor without stalling it. A heifer knocked him into a fence post hard enough to bruise 3 ribs. He dropped a hay bale on his own foot and limped for a week. He burned dinner so badly the smoke alarm woke up the whole house. But he never quit. Every morning, 5:30, he was on that porch. One afternoon in March, we were repairing the fence along the North Ridge. The same fence my father had written about. The one I'd fixed with him 100 times. My son was driving a post into frozen ground. The post hit rock and wouldn't go deeper. He tried again. Same result. Then again. Harder. The post splintered. He threw the mallet down. This is impossible. I walked over, picked up a new post, moved it 8 inches to the right, and drove it clean into the earth. Soft spot. The rock shelf runs east. You go around it. Not through it. He looked at the post, then at me. That's not just about fencing, is it? No, it's not. He picked up his mallet and drove the next post perfectly. We worked in silence for an hour. The kind of silence my father used to write about in his logbooks. Comfortable. Shared. The silence between men who don't need words to understand each other. When we finished, we sat on the tailgate and looked out at the land. Mountains in the distance, cattle grazing in the valley below. The sky so wide, it made every problem feel smaller. Dad, he said. Yeah, I read one of Grandpa's logbooks last night. The one from 1999. I waited. He wrote about the night I helped him deliver a calf. I was 9. He said I held the lantern for 3 hours without complaining. My son's voice cracked. He said I was going to be okay. I remember that night, I said. The calf almost didn't make it. But it did. He looked at me. Am I going to be okay? I thought about everything. The courthouse, the restraining order, the lies, the gambling, the debts, the manipulation, all of it. Then, I thought about a 9-year-old boy, holding a lantern steady in a dark barn while a calf fought its way into the world. Yeah, I said. You're going to be okay. He nodded, wiped his eyes with the back of his calloused hand, and went back to work. A year later, October again. Full circle. The aspens had turned gold along the ridgeline. My son had paid back every dollar of the $38,000 through 12 months of honest labor. Jenna's father was under federal indictment for wire fraud and conspiracy. Jenna had filed for divorce and moved back east. My son didn't fight it. He said losing her was losing a lie, and he was done with lies. He'd attended 52 Gamblers Anonymous meetings in Billings without missing one. He could run the tractor, manage the herd, repair any fence on the property, and deliver a calf by himself in the dark. One morning he came to me with a cup of coffee and something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. I got a job offer, he said. Seattle. My old firm. Senior analyst. $180 a year. I set my coffee down. That's good money. I turned it down. I looked at him. He looked like his grandfather. Weathered hands, steady eyes. A man who'd learned what it cost to build something real. I don't want to go back to who I was, he said. I want to learn how to run this place. Not as an employee, as your partner. Someday, if I earn it, as the next generation. I studied him for a long time. Then I held out my hand. He took it. We shook the way ranchers do. Firm. Honest. A deal sealed by grip and eye contact. Not paperwork. That evening I drove out to the cottonwood tree where my father was buried next to my mother. I sat in the grass and read the last entry in his logbook, the one he wrote the week before he died. I don't have much time left. My lungs are tired. My legs don't work the way they used to. But my mind is clear, and I want to put this down while I still can. This ranch was never about money. It was about what a man builds when he decides to show up every single day and do the work, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching, even when the person you love most in the world has lost his way and is trying to tear it all down. George will figure it out. He always does. And Kyle will come back. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But someday that boy will stand on this porch at dawn and understand what I was trying to give him. Not land. Not money. A reason to be better than he thinks he can be. That's the only inheritance worth leaving. I closed the logbook. The sun was going down over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that my father had watched 10,000 times from this exact spot. You were right, Dad, I said to the quiet earth. He came back. The wind moved through the cottonwood leaves. The cattle settled in the valley below. And behind me, back at the house, I could hear my son on the porch, talking on the phone with his GA sponsor, laughing about something, sounding like a man who'd finally stopped running from himself. 4 generations of Mercers on this land. The ranch endured. Not because of what it was worth, but because of what it taught. And to you, listening right now, wherever you are, remember this. When my father changed that will, I thought it was the cruelest thing he could have done to my son. I was wrong. It was the most loving. He didn't punish Kyle. He bet on me to save him, and he bet on Kyle to be worth saving. Real family vengeance isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let them destroy themselves. It's about saying, I won't give up on you, even when you've given up on yourself. Don't wait for a funeral and a courtroom to learn that forgiveness isn't something you hand over. It's something you build together, post by post, day by day, callus by callus, until the fence stands straight and the land holds firm, and the person you almost lost is standing beside you in the cold morning air, ready to work. My father's vengeance wasn't punishment. It was redemption. And thank God, he was right about both of us. If this story moved you, if you've ever wondered whether a father's toughest decision could actually be his greatest act of love, drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel, because the stories we tell here will challenge you, break your heart, and maybe change the way you see your own family. Thank you for staying until the end. Fair warning, the stories on this channel contain fictional elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. If that's not for you, no hard feelings. But if you're ready for more truth wrapped in story, I'll see you in the next one.